And welcome once again to Leto's Law. I'm Steve Leto, attorney at law in the state of Michigan, where I've been practicing law for 28 years now in the fields of consumer protection. Lemon law, as I used to say at the beginning of all my old school podcasts. I haven't done that in a while. Once in a while, it just slips out. Hey, Bob, how you doing? No, I've never been to Oklahoma. Today, I want to visit the land of meth, South Dakota. I've been to South Dakota, by the way, years ago, before they were on the meth. And now I've got, as you can see, plenty of Meth We're On It shirts. So I thank everyone for passing them along. I've got a supply to last me a lifetime, just like South Dakota, and it's meth and it's meth supplies. There you go. White Rock, British Columbia. Very cool. Yeah, I've never been up that corner. I've mentioned that before. So did you have your new Ford inspected before you bought it? No, I did not. I test drove it and I climbed around it and looked at it myself. I personally think that if you test drive a brand new vehicle and inspect it well, you should be okay. But what can I tell you? Hello from Ocala, Florida. Jared, how you doing down there? Yeah, we got snow again this morning here in southeastern Michigan. Actually, some parts of Michigan apparently got pummeled. I got about an inch where I am, so looked out this morning and saw a light, what we call a dusting of snow across the grass. Some grass things still sticking up, but for the most part, it's all white outside right now. So there you go. Happy Thanksgiving from the UK. Yeah, it's Thanksgiving weekend here. We have our Thanksgiving in America on this past Thursday. Friday, of course, is Black Friday, and I drove by the mall, Great Lakes Crossing, on Friday and Saturday. And on Friday, it was a madhouse. There was a line of cars all the way back onto the freeway, both directions on the exit ramps. And then the parking lots you could see were just jam-packed. I didn't go shopping. I simply drove by it. So there you go. So Kenny Briggs, good afternoon, Steve. Hey, Kenny, how are you? Good to hear from my good buddy up in Wisconsin. Kenny is a white electronics dealer, along with being a great guy. And he was actually one of the few people who knew my belt buckle story before I went public with it. So I actually mentioned him in the video, I think. I had told him I was going metal detecting that day. When I came back, he goes, "Did you find anything?" And I said, "Not really, just some junk." And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a second, I wonder if that belt buckle might have some value. So from there, it became a story. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I put up a video last week talking about how I'd broken 100,000 subscribers. And I told the story about how I found the $16,000 belt buckle, which sounds crazy until you hear the story, but it's true, every word of it. Stephen Baines, I ordered a Tesla Model 3, went to test drive it again, and they just gave it to me for the night, which was awesome. About to take it back. What's wrong with it? Did it not work out for you? Yeah, that's the one unusual thing about, Tesla's business model. In some states like Michigan, they don't have dealers. They're not allowed to, so they've got a showroom, and you can go into the mall and look at them. But if you want to test drive one, obviously you've got to do some other, gymnastics to get there. I don't mean donkey gymnastics. I mean setting up a test drive somehow and so on, trying to get that done. So happy Thanksgiving from Toledo, Ohio. How about those Buckeyes? 96Z28SS. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Michigan's lost to Ohio State now a few times in a row. I wish they wouldn't, but what can I tell you? Ohio State's a machine. Ohio State's starting to look like Alabama from a few years ago, and I'm not that big of a football fan, especially not big time or anything like that. But I'm aware of it. I follow Michigan. I like the University of Michigan, but have to admit that Ohio State, at least this year, is in a different league, which is why they get to be in the playoffs and we don't. So. Hello from the eastern townships of Quebec on the way to Vermont, JP. And JP sent me a postcard this past week. Thank you very much. I like getting postcards as well as actual mail, the U.S. postal kind of mail. My address is at the end of all my videos now. I always encourage people to send me stuff. Love your shirts. They look great. By the way, I'm on it. Taylor Stern. There's a debate amongst the people in the advertising industry about whether or not this right here is a win for South Dakota, because they've got people like me talking about their stuff. I don't care what you say. The fact that we're laughing at them while they're trying to do something serious just shows that it is not a win. I don't care what you say. There are things people know about, and it doesn't mean that it's, oh my gosh, we've accomplished our task because we've got people talking about us. I can name all kinds of things that people talk about where you're like, I bet they wish that hadn't happened, even though people are talking about it. So, hi from Edmonton, Canada. Love your stories, James McIntyre. Hey, thank you very much. I've been getting a lot of contacts and correspondence from Canada the last few months. I really appreciate that. It's kind of funny. I do look at the data on my channel, and I know a lot of the guys who create stuff for YouTube don't always go into the backstories, but we have access to a lot of the data, the statistics, the demographics, and so on, and it shows us the makeup of our audience and where the views come from. And the United States, of course, is the number one source of viewership for Lehto's Law. Number 2 is Canada, and 3 and 4 are the UK and Australia, and then very, very small percentage scattered around the world. And I'm always fascinated to see that, hey, somebody in Czechoslovakia or Finland or Belgium or what have you, by the way, is Eastern Europe. Always interested to see that people are checking from anywhere. I find it fascinating. So there you go. Paul Madaliano says, thank the Canadian robot. That could be. And by the way, I've placed an order with the Canadian robot overlords and asked for some follow-up intros and outros. So we'll have some new voiceovers coming shortly. Let's just leave it at that. Hi from Tacoma, Washington. Woo, Australia, Duncan Campbell. Thank you for checking in. Hi from Davis and Zagnuts and Meth. What a rush. Russian bot, I sent you a box, probably sitting in the post office with transmitter tubes. No, I've got that. If it's the one that's got the 4 tubes in it, I just got that. Unfortunately, there's no way to stand them up without them getting knocked over. I've got a bunch of stuff in here that I haven't got on display yet. I don't want to lose the microphones. I don't want to lose the cars. So I'm still working on it. My brother came in. He's going to make me some shelves for the OEDs that are back here. But I'm going to really have to work on getting the collection of knickknacks behind me better displayed. So we're working on it. But by the way, anything you send me, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. Drone video. I've watched your show from Czech Republic. It was late September, early October. That was me. There you go. Outros or extros? Yeah, that's a Bill Holloway asks, and that's an industry question. We refer to an introduction or as intro, and then at the end, whether it's an outro or an extro. I'd never heard extra before, and then the Canadian robot told me that that's what they call them. But in America, I'd always heard outro. So, excuse me. I keep forgetting my microphone's got a mute button on it. You need an American flag on your wall above your microphones. Hey, I'll tell you right now, what I really need to get is a gold fringed flag, because a gold fringed flag would drive all the sovereign citizens crazy because they think that that's a sign of something else. Feed the Chunk asks OEDs ? I assume you're asking, what did I mean by that? These right here, the books behind the shirts, there's 20 volumes. It's the Oxford English Dictionary. We say OEDs plural, but it's actually OED, but it's reference to the 20 books. So what can I tell you? A fantastic car show this weekend you would have enjoyed in Davidson, North Carolina. Jacob West. What type of cars do they have there? I'd be curious. My favorite car shows are the ones that have cars from pretty much the 60s forward. I mean, don't get me wrong. Cars from the 30s and 40s can be very, very beautiful and so on. But I personally like the 60s muscle myself. Carl Childers says, I can't believe that lawyer had the temerity to sue you when they knew they didn't have a case on all fours to begin with. And Carl, I salute your use of the word temerity. He's referring, of course, to Crazy Town, the 4-episode series I'm putting up. Episode 2 dropped this past Wednesday. Episode 3 will drop this Wednesday. Yeah, it's a frivolous lawsuit that was lodged against me. So there you go. You should zoom the camera out some so you have more display area available. Yeah, you know, it's interesting you should say that, because I'm sure you noticed that, number one, the camera I'm using for this broadcast is a little lower. and changes the perspective. Like my head right now is blocking the top microphone. But the big camera, my Nikon, has been clipping the top of the microphones lately. So I might pan it back a tiny little bit. I'm not sure if I'll be able to use that space, but we'll figure something out. So there you go. As Mika 85 viewing from the lesser known Amsterdam in New York, finally caught the live stream. Hey, thanks for checking in. We're over 300, by the way. Last week we broke 600 in terms of number of people in the room at one time. So I appreciate that. Steve, do you have more car models? Actually, I do. I've got another Dodge Daytona, a red one, that matches the Bob Isaac Daytona, just without the paint job. And then I've got another Tucker. And the other Tucker I have is a funny story, because I have the green Tucker behind me, but I have a white Tucker that was signed by Preston Tucker's daughter. And his daughter, I believe, is still alive. At least she was about a year ago. And she was very, very upset and angry with me. And it's another story I don't have time for it now. But somebody told me they had this Tucker that had been signed by her at a car show years ago. And I actually bid on it in an auction, and I won. And I specifically got it because that is funny to have a car signed by somebody who doesn't like me. So why the extra microphone, Tom Bowen? Good question. This microphone is used on the videos that I put up on YouTube, but it is not equipped to run into this webcam setup I've got right now. So I'm using a a microphone with a mute button. And this is a Nessie Blue. So it's a very cool USB mic. It's actually fairly bulletproof in terms of that, but get a shorter chair. Yeah, that would do it. Lawrence Taylor, the shirt I sent is supposed to be there tomorrow. No, Lawrence, I believe yours is the one I'm wearing right now. It was a black one. I got a black shirt in the mail yesterday, and I think it was Lawrence who got that to me. So there you go. Jay Felix, any more info on Jelly Bean guy from the marathon? You know, I have not heard. I mentioned that I ran the Free Press Marathon this past October, and there's always a guy in Indian Village handing out jelly beans, and I always stop and shake his hand and thank him. And I say, dude, you don't understand the emotional lift I get every year knowing you'll be here. The jelly beans hit the spot. It's right around the 17 or 18 mile mark. And he wasn't there this year. And I heard from some people that he may have had health issues. I hope he's okay. Have not heard though. So maybe we'll find out. Fight for Sound, Meth, we're on it. New to the channel. What's the backstory? South Dakota launched a meth awareness campaign a couple weeks ago. And some people suggested it's misguided because they have shirts that say meth, we're on it, over the state of South Dakota. And they went so far as to trademark it. And I just think it's the funniest thing of all time. So I begged my audience, if anybody had access to the shirts, to send me a shirt. And I've since received 5. So I have more than enough. But I will wear these proudly. I've worn them in videos already. They will get mixed into the rotation, and you'll be seeing them for some time now going forward. So there you go. New coat of white paint behind you? No, unfortunately. In fact, I apologize. The walls aren't even white in this room. The walls are some weird color that I think somebody bought some like army surplus paint that had been discarded during the Korean War. And it was probably very, very inexpensive, but the camera is just adjusting that properly. But if you watch the videos, you'll see that it's still the strange off-white color that has always been. So yeah, it's the next Got Milk campaign, Beaker. Yeah, got meth. See here, the picture I sent to you yesterday, the Dodge Daytona, was a part of the car show. Jacob, oh, there you go. Yeah, Jacob sent me an email or maybe a Facebook message, I forgot which, of 2 Dodge Daytonas being trailered someplace. One of them was purple and yellow, like the Marty Robbins livery, and the other one was a work in progress. And yeah, they both looked interesting. I'd be very curious to know what the story is on the Marty Robbins, because I don't know for a fact that one of his actual race cars survived or not. And so that's the thing, is you'll see a lot of these cloned vehicles out there. If you see the Bobby Isaac car at a car show, that's the real car. I've driven that car. And there's also the Ramos Stott Superbird that shows up at places. Doug Schellinger owns it. And then there's, of course, the Richard Petty Superbird, which I've had a ride in. But many of the other cars that show up at shows is a number 99 Charlie Glotzback Dow Daytona that is not real. It's a clone. Nothing wrong with the clones, but it's just you have to kind of know what these things are, and to understand what you're looking at. So there you go. Let's see here. I just figured out last week that I can actually scroll through the comments and save them. So there you go. Ed Grabsky, hi from downtown Stittville, New York. Is that right? Stittville? Never heard of it. Did the robot lady get her new shoes? I remember a video a while back where she said she wanted a pair of new shoes. I don't think so. But it's funny. If you stick around to the end of the videos, there's often a little what we call an Easter egg for you. So why do you like the Dodge Daytonas and Plymouth Superbirds so much? Do you own one? 412 Kelly. No, I do not. And I would like to someday, but the problem is those are the kinds of cars. They only built 503 or 505 of the Daytonas. They built like 1,920 of the Superbirds. So the total population at the time the cars were built is about 2,400, 2,500 maybe. And the cars are rare and valuable. And I mean, I see them on the road at car shows and so on. But I would not feel good driving one because I'd worry about getting in an accident or putting miles on it or whatever. So I'm really tempted to buy a 1969 Dodge Charger and take it to a custom place and have them clone it and turn it into a car. I wouldn't feel bad driving, but at that point I'm like, I don't know if I want to put that much work and money into it. But I've always thought the cars were fascinating, and they're very unusual. I mean, I wrote a whole book about them. But in 1968, Chrysler was getting beaten badly by Ford in NASCAR. And Chrysler was convinced they had the best engine in the Hemi. They're like, why are we losing? And some aerodynamics engineers came in and said, well, I can tell you why you're losing. Your cars are shaped badly. And somebody said, well, what would you guys do? And the guys are rocket scientists. They go, oh, we'd put a nose cone and a wing on it, and that would make it go faster. And somebody said, okay, go do that. So once in a while, you ask a stupid question, you get a stupid answer, and crazy things happen. And so those cars are kind of like a symbol of at a time when the car companies would do crazy stuff to win races in NASCAR. But then again, of course, back then the cars didn't all look alike, and NASCAR wasn't just a circus. There you go. Yeah, we're hovering around 400 right now in the room. We hit 600 last week, so we'll see. Patriot Lighting, how did lemon law get to be your niche? Would you ever consider teaching lemon law after you quit practicing? I'll back up and do that backwards. I actually did teach consumer protection at the University of Detroit for 10 years. So I've taught it, and I've talked about it on the radio and on videos. So I'm happy to talk to anybody about anything, I always say. But I got into lemon law primarily because I like cars, and what other niche of the law would allow you to sit around and talk about cars with people, as far as that goes. So it's just a great way for me to be able to talk about cars with people and help people with cars and practice law at the same time. So there you go. Let's see here. Hi from Vero Beach, Florida, sunny and 80. Yeah, we've neither of those today. Somebody asked, and I get this asked a lot, are you a ham radio operator, referring to the D104 mic, which is the lollipop right there. It's hard to do this backwards, but it's that one right there. No, I'm not. I've got a brother who was a ham for a long time, and I know other people who are as well. And I just worked in radio for a long time, and so to me, the microphones are an homage to my time in radio. And so I've been collecting microphones. I've probably got 20 or 30, and I've got some of them here, but I've got more. Somebody else asked, how do you like those canoe outriggers? Greg Stiles. If you poke around on my channel, you see some videos of me in a canoe with an engine on it, motorized canoe. And I've got outriggers on it, which, hang off the side and sit in the water and keep the canoe from tipping. I like them a lot. I've had my canoe out in places where the water is extremely rough. And in the time I've owned my canoe with the motor, I've only tipped it one time, and that was without the outriggers. And I'll tell you right now, when you tip a canoe that's got a motor on it. You don't, you can tip a canoe that you're paddling. It's no big deal. You flip it over, dump the water out of it. If you tip a canoe with a 65-pound motor on it, if you dunk the motor, you immediately start thinking, can I get it restarted? Can I get the canoe back up right? And then did I damage the motor? So these are concerns you have. So I don't like the idea of taking my canoe out where it can tip. So if I've got the motor on it, I've got the outriggers on it. And it's partly to protect the motor, and on some levels, it's to protect me and the passenger. I don't tell my passengers this, but it's actually to protect the motor, not them. So there you go. Harry Taylor, are bots allowed to lie? I think they can, so long as it's not about one of those questions about, will you hurt a human being? Getting back to Isaac Asimov's rules for robots. Bill Holloway, tip a canoe, and Tyler too. Which of course is the famous presidential campaign slogan for somebody back in the late 1800s, and they were raving about the fact that they were the hero of the Tippecanoe battle. And Tippecanoe was a place, someplace was it Indiana, Illinois, someplace down that way? Very, very strange campaign slogan. Watched Ford versus Ferrari a couple of days ago. Mark Heil, great movie. Yeah, I agree. In fact, I've talked to quite a few car guys who've seen it. I saw it a couple weekends ago, and as far as car movies go, it was wonderful. I will admit that some parts that were probably dramatized a little bit too much. They softened Carroll Shelby up a little bit, if you know what I mean. But I think as far as car movies go, if you said, "Hey, Steve, we're going to make a car movie in Hollywood," my expectations would not be as high as would have been met. This movie did a very, very good job. So I think they did a good job of it. Steve Brandon, what brand and variety of meth do you like? I can only assume if you were to do meth, go to South Dakota, because they're on it. They must know. I got to be careful when I'm laughing, because when I'm laughing too hard, I can see the camera bouncing. So I'll try to stop that. Does your lady robot dream about electric sheep? That's a good question. I'm pretty sure we talked about the movie Blade Runner here before, but Blade Runner is based on a book by Philip Dick called "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" President Harrison's campaign slogan, Carl Childers, Tippecanoe and Tyler 2. There you go. So President Harrison was the hero of the Battle of Tippecanoe. So there you go. Jacob West, did Michigan get hit by that snowstorm? Kind of. At least where I am, kind of. We got the edge of it. I got about an inch of snow overnight here, but I know other parts of Michigan got hammered. I heard on the news this morning that there are still some places, I think in the Upper Peninsula, in the Keweenaw, that don't have power, and they lost it Thanksgiving. So, or at least maybe they're just getting it turned on recently, but they were without power for a day or two in some portions of the UP. So Ohio is t-shirt weather. I assume you mean Southern Ohio. Rick Moore, your thoughts on the claim that you can demand payment from robocalls? Yeah, I had several people send me a thing about a local news station. I don't know if it was in Chicago, where it was, that was talking about how you can turn robocalls into money. And they're talking about the fact that there's a law called I think it's a Telephone Consumer Protection Act, but it's a federal statute that says if somebody calls you and you tell them to stop and they call you a second time, they owe you a couple $1,000s. And that's true. But nobody follows the law, and most of the robocalls are coming from out of the country. So collecting on it is impossible. The laws are on the books, but everyone ignores the laws. And so you cannot collect money from a call center in Bangladesh that's being piped through the Philippines and then rerouted through a Tor router in Russia. And no, you are not going to make any money off those. I do know a guy who specialized in this, and he knew there's a few people who violate the TCPA fairly often. And he had explained to me ways that he made some money at it, but it was extremely unusual. But just the calls I get, and I'm guessing I get about 10 a day right now between my cell phone and my desk phone. I get about 10 a day. They are literally just, hi, this is Rachel from Card Services, or the, extended warranty in your truck's about to expire, or health care for everyone. And these are all just call centers, in other countries. So you cannot collect on those at all. For 99% of them, you cannot collect on. So there you go. Let's see here. Those meth strips are looking good. They did a nice job. Yeah. Like I said, I'm just what I think is actually an interesting question is if you were to look at the statistics 5 years from now and see if anything changed in South Dakota with respect to meth usage. Did it go up? Did it go down? Did it not change? Whatever. And so, I mean, maybe they are laughing all the way to the bank on this one, figuratively speaking, and maybe somehow the meth awareness being raised this way will put a dent in the meth problem in South Dakota. We'll see. Did you see the report from Canada where a comedian got fined for a joke that offended someone? No, I did not see that. I apologize. So if I spot it, I'll take a look at it. There's a guy in the UK who changed his number to a premium rate phone line. So when he gets calls, the call centers have to pay him. QA library. What, you mean change it like a 976 number or something, or 900 number? Because I think the auto dialers for the most part just dial regular, area codes, but we'll see. J-Pole. I hung up on Rachel from Card Services so much she felt like an old girlfriend. NS Smith 0723, Florida dog trapped in car, drives in circles for hours. I saw that. I was going to do a story on it, but it's such a visual thing. I can't really do it. There's an interesting phenomenon when it comes to automobiles. I've seen it happen now 4 or 5 times where a vehicle gets dumped into reverse with nobody in it. And it backs out and it hits a circular thing, oftentimes at the end of a cul-de-sac. And if the wheels get cocked just right, the car will sit there and go backwards until it runs out of gas. And so what happens is somebody will call the cops and there's a car out here doing circles. And the first thing cops are going to say is how much gas is in it. If you had a full tank, you're in trouble. I've seen it before where somebody with a wrecker that had the straps on the back backed up really, really quickly and got in there. So the car backed into the straps on the wrecker and they quickly jumped out and shut the car off. But apparently what happened in the last week was somebody put their dog in the car and then they went to do something and the dog ran over and hit the shifter into reverse and the car backed out and was doing this thing with the circles around a cul-de-sac. Dog's going for a ride. But like I said, I didn't do much with that story simply because I'm like, without showing the video, it's really going to be a letdown. And once I mention that the story is real, someone's going to go, I'm going to go look at the video, and then they're gone. So, H412, evening from Scotland, Steve. Hey, how you doing over there? What is it, like 6 o'clock right now? 6:20? There you go. I've never been to Scotland. I really want to go, and I've been to London and England, but I've never gotten up and out of the general London area. I really need to do that. Cars rolling backwards only happens in Michigan. No. That happens. It happens quite a bit. I got a question. My Nissan's automatic CVT transmission is tripping up intermittently entering freeway. Car is under warranty. Dealer wants $100 for inspection if they don't find anything. Is it still under warranty? Ultra AL asks. I'm asking if it's still under warranty, because obviously if it's still under warranty, they shouldn't be charging an inspection fee. But then again, if it's not under warranty, then they're going to charge an inspection fee. It's too bad, though, because, you think a dealership would take a look at something like that and go, well, whether it's a problem that happens a lot or not. What I would ask you to do is go onto NHTSA, NHTSA, NHTSA.gov, and look up your make, model, and year of car, and then ask to see if it has any outstanding technical service bulletins or recalls on the transmission. Because if it does have TSBs and you go in and say, look, I think it's doing this, and there's a TSB on it, they're more likely going to look at it and not charge you that inspection. So there you go. Hemi Cuda versus Challenger Hellcat. You mean a Hemi Cuda from back in the day or a modern Cuda? But it's kind of funny. I like the Hellcats, and I like actually most of the car companies now have done a decent job of bringing back some of these retro looking cars. The modern Camaro is not a bad looking car either. I'm not as big of a Camaro fan, but I really do like the Hellcats and the other vehicles that Chrysler put out. The ones with the monster motors are crazy. And Ford has done a great job up until recently with the Mustang. Slapping the Mustang nameplate on an SUV with 4 doors is one of the dumbest things a car company's ever done, but that's another story altogether. H412, come to Sterling, and I can show you around and get you a dram. I assume a dram is something you drink. Check it out. Sub GR77. I used to live near Saugatuck. I don't think I've ever been to Saugatuck. Somebody else asked about Saugatuck. And Saugatuck is over here on the shore of Lake Michigan, west side of the state of Michigan. So there you go. Someone else asked, when you listen to music at home, CD or vinyl? Yeah, I actually don't have a record player right now, and I apologize. I've got some vinyl that I just can't play. But I've loaded most of my music. I've ripped them all onto my computers, and I listen on my computer. So I've gone full digital on that. So Florida man demands bank teller give him less money during alleged robbery. There you go. Racing with paramotors. Have you ever been snowmobiling? I will admit I've never been snowmobiling. There's a few things. I will admit I've got a couple big gaps in my knowledge and experience in life. I've never gone water skiing. I've never gone snowmobiling. Let's see what else. There's 2 or 3 of these things I've just never done, and people are like, what? Okay. I have gone surfing. I still own a skateboard. I mean, I literally I had it out a few weeks ago. I don't ride around as much as I used to. I own a skateboard. And I've gone roller skating and ice skating, and I'm pretty good on ice skates, but for some odd reason, never been on a snowmobile. And like I said, just weird little gaps. Never gone water skiing. But that's simply because no one in my family and no one I knew had a boat when I was growing up. So never did that, I guess. So H412 whiskey, a drop of the real stuff. Okay, there you go. and by the way, I've mentioned before that I don't drink beer, alcohol, things like that very often, but I will on special occasions, especially when I'm traveling. And one reason I'll tell you that is I've been to some very, very nice beaches, like in the Turks and Caicos, Antigua, or St. Lucia, things like that. And if you are sitting on a beach of white sand with blue water out across and dolphins jumping, and it's 95 degrees, and someplace else everyone you know is freezing to death, if you don't have a drink in your hand, you're doing it wrong. So, I'm not saying get rip roaring drunk. I'm not saying roll around in the sand or go out and play with the dolphins. I'm just saying there are occasions where it works. So, checking in from Irvine, Kentucky. What's your favorite classic car and why? That's a tough call, because if you said, because I wrote a book about the Chrysler Turbine cars, and I love these cars. But there's only 9 of them left in the world. Of those 9, only I think 5 run. And if I had one, I wouldn't be able to drive it. I wouldn't want to drive it. I'd be scared to drive it. But I've always liked the 69 Dodge Charger Daytona and its associated cars. I had a 69 Dodge Charger in high school, and a lot of guys will tell you, car guys will tell you, that that first car often makes an impression. So somewhere down the road, I might get myself another 69 Dodge Charger. Mice Elf jet ski, personal watercraft. Yes, I have. I can tell you that a while back, I mentioned before I was married before, and I had a brother-in-law who had a boat and a couple of watercraft and a personal watercraft jet skis. And once a summer, I go out on the boat, get that out of my system. And a couple of times each summer, I'd hop on the old jet ski and get that out of my system. So the one thing is that when people buy boats or RVs and they go like, oh, I can do this all the time, you're not going to use an RV all the time unless you're going to live in it. And the same thing is you get a boat, unless you actually live on a lake and can walk down to the dock and use it. You get your boat, take it down the lake, drop it in the water, pull it back up. Blah, blah, blah. A lot of work, and before you know it, it's sitting back behind your house covered with a tarp, right? So the trick is to find someone else who's got one, and you can get it out of your system that way. That's the key. By the way, we just broke 500 people in the room. So that's cool. We hit 600 last time, so we'll see what happens now. Hey, Steve from Grand Rapids, now live in Central Florida. The fishing down here is really good. Do you fish? I've been fishing as a child. I fished a lot near my grandmother's house in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. We'd go fishing for trout. I'm talking about literally a stick and a piece of fishing line and a hook, flip over rocks, find some worms, do that in a little creek and catch trout about yay big. They were all keepers, of course. And, that's a lot of fun for a kid. It's like something straight out of, Mark Twain. But a good friend of mine named John, who lives in Alaska, is in town right now. And we had lunch yesterday, and he invited me up to Alaska, and he actually has a place out on stilts near a river where the tide comes in and out right underneath his house. And I mean, that's a cabin. That's not his primary residence. That's a place he's got. And so he goes there to go fishing, and he can sit on his front porch and just catch fish, all big salmon, like yay big. And he cleans the salmon, and he showed me pictures. He cleans the salmon on his own deck, and he's tossing and he's showing me photographs where it's like a bald eagle this far from him, watching him clean a fish, going, hurry, I'm hungry. So I might go up to Alaska and do some fishing with John and, feed the eagles too. So there you go. Ranger Dan, excuse me. Did you hear that Danny Elfman of Oingo Boingo, who wrote the Simpsons theme, said the Simpsons may be canceled? Yes, I read that. For those of you who don't know, the Simpsons, of course, has been on for decades, and they keep it going. So you can do that with the cartoon because the characters never age for the most part. And Danny Elfman was the lead singer and songwriter of Oingo Boingo, and the band broke up a few years back, but he was making money in Hollywood writing theme songs and scoring movies. And he did the theme song to The Simpsons. And he's got more money than God right now because of that. And so he gave an interview where he just casually mentioned, said, it looks like next season might be the last season for The Simpsons. And it's causing shockwaves through the community because, you'd think they'd make an official announcement or something. Or if they didn't, I mean, was he allowed to say that or what? But you never know. So the show, I believe, is still making money. I think it's still got good ratings. I think it's still profitable, but I'm still making money. I think it's still got good ratings. I think it's still profitable. But I suspect that somebody who's in charge probably said, something, we've beaten this thing to death. Because I've watched it, and my personal favorites are between seasons 5 and 10. There was a spot there where some of the most classic shows of all the series were there. I tune in now, and it looks like they're really trying really, really hard to keep it funny. And when you try too hard, it's not as funny. So it's sad. But if it ended, I wouldn't be that upset about it, because simply I think it's probably gone on a few years too long. So, but I love Danny Elfman and Oingo Boingo, of course. And I also read an interview with him where he said that he can no longer tour. Somebody said, why don't you reform the band and simply do like 1 or 2 shows? Because they could sell out. They used to sell out the Hollywood Bowl in California all the time. They could do that now and charge like $300 a ticket if they wanted to. And he goes, I can't. He goes, my doctors told me he has such bad hearing loss from when he was touring earlier. And he goes, if I toured again, he goes, I'd probably cause permanent hearing damage. And he goes, I don't want to go deaf. And I don't blame him. Selfishly, I'd love to see them perform. I never saw them perform live. But, I also understand a man not wanting to go deaf who's a musician and makes his money partly with his ears. So there you go. Roxanne, welcome, Stephen. And I'll even forgive the alternate spelling on a day like today. My favorite is a 68 Chevy Nova, because my dad had one when I was a small child, and it just made me giggle when he would kick it down. You could hear the 4-barrel kick in. Michael Thacker. There was a time when back then, if you had a Nova with a 350 and a 4-barrel, you didn't think it was a hot rod, because there were other cars with big blocks, and there was, these, and it's kind of funny because like my mom had a 68 or 69 60. I forgot the year. 68 or 69 Buick Skylark, and it was brown, and it had a 350 in it, which I think also had an automatic transmission. And at the time, it's like my mom's car, right? It's my mom's car. Never occurred to anybody that was like a hot rod. And now you go to a car show and they got a 68 Buick Skylark, and you go, "Ooh, that's a cool car." And I know that, there were people who drove that car. My mom wasn't behind the wheel, who occasionally recognized that the 350 could actually, get up and go when it had to. So there you go. FAQ NSA. Steve, can I do the intro outro score for your show? Hey, by the way, if anybody out there has the ability to do these kinds of things, be it scores or intros or outros, please email me directly. We'll talk. Steve@letoslaw.com. It's in all my videos at the very end credits. Steve, common spelling, at the @ symbol, Letoslaw, LEHTOSLAW.com, Steve@letoslaw.com. Because, I personally think that the billboards, the front and the end, I had nothing underneath them before. So I just thought, well, I'll just stick in an intro and an outro here. And hilarity has ensued ever since. Stephen Cook, hey, I think she's speaking to me. Well, that's the whole point. When you're listening to a voice on the radio or on the internet, you want to think they're speaking directly to you. Unless it becomes a weird David Letterman kind of thing where there was a woman who actually thought that he was speaking to her. And she used to go and break into his house. But that's another story altogether. In your opinion, what's the worst modern car on the road? There's a bunch of bad ones out there, but I'm not really sure. It also depends on whether you're talking about looks or mechanical, like, quality. Because unfortunately, and I know it's just me getting old, but lately the car companies are putting out some really ugly stuff. So, who's your favorite YouTube lawyer? I don't spend much. Stephen Brenson asked that. I don't actually watch a lot of YouTube lawyers. The only one I know about Mental Block. The one guy everybody always asks me about. He does the really, really long things. He's the intellectual property guy. So I watch him from time to time, but that's pretty much it. MASH was the best show. Wizard 378. MASH was good, but MASH also went on a few seasons too long. It's in reruns on one of the channels I get on my cable. And the earliest seasons are pretty good, and the later seasons are just horribly unwatchable. And it's sad because, and we've talked about TV before here, so I'm not gonna go off on a real big tangent here. But there was a time in the 70s where the networks had no problem at all taking a show that was going one direction, it's going woo, and veering off in some crazy other direction. And you watch the last few seasons of MASH, where Klinger's wearing normal clothes and Colonel Potter's just a crotchety old guy who says things like, well, that'll put the oatmeal in your boots, and you go, who is this? Like, who found this funny? So if I see MASH in the listings, I glance quickly to see who's in it. And in my mind, once Frank Burns left, the show's went woo downhill. And of course, Larry Linville never did anything else of value, I don't think. Although I think he may have been on an episode of Love Boat or two, and that was pretty much it. By the way, Thomas Case, that is a good question. Hang on. We're over 500. I think I may have mentioned that before, though. Thomas Case goes, did you ever get the joy of suing AMC, American Motors? And here's the thing. American Motors got bought by Chrysler. And I don't know the exact year. And Chrysler bought AMC specifically to get the Jeep brand, because Jeep at the time was owned by AMC. And so when Chrysler bought AMC to get the Jeep brand, they bought it along with all of its liabilities. And among its liabilities was Renault. And there was a time when you could go to a dealership in America and buy a Renault car that was, I forgot it was badged AMC or simply sold by AMC, but it came with an AMC warranty. And so there was a brief period of time when I first got out of law school. I've written about this, by the way, for I think roadtrack.com. when there were so many of these cars on the road that were defective, that when I became a lawyer, people would come to my office and say, Steve, I've got a defective Renault Alliance. And they, I mean, you're stating the obvious at that point, but they have a stack of repair orders. And one of the problems with that car was that there was underneath the carpeting was the fuse box. Okay. So most cars put the fuse box someplace where you can find it. And oftentimes it's down underneath the dashboard or underneath the hood in some cars. And in this car, it was on the floor, which is a horrible place to put it, because in a place like Michigan, for instance, you cannot keep your floors dry because you get in the car with wet feet or snow. And then what happens is the water would seep in and the water would get in the fuse box. And these cars all had electrical problems. I could call up my friend Jack. I still remember his name, but I'll just say his first name. I could call up Jack at Chrysler and go, I've got another one. He wouldn't ask what type of car I was talking about. He'd go, send me the documents, and I would just send the documents. He'd send me an offer, and they'd buy it back. So I can tell you that as part of the process of Chrysler buying AMC to acquire Jeep, they also bought back a ton of Renault Alliances. I think that was the car, because of the bad fuse panel placement. And it's one of those idiotic things where you want to find the engineer who said, yeah, let's put the fuse box underneath the feet of the passenger and the driver. It's like, what an idiotic thing to do. So, yeah, Le Car by Renault. That's one of those examples where somebody came up with a really, really dumb idea for a name of a car, and it became a joke. But so there you go. Do I miss Oldsmobile and Pontiac? You know, I was never a huge Oldsmobile fan. There are only two genders asked that, by the way. The thing about Oldsmobile is they had a very, very short window with like the 442, like a convertible W30 442 is a beautiful car. A friend of mine had a hardtop 442 that was a monster back in the late 70s, early 80s. And you know, but Oldsmobile to me was never that big of a deal. But Pontiac had a legacy. I mean, they, you know, the Trans Ams and the Firebirds. And you know, there's a whole bunch of really, really cool stuff they put out. The 455 Super Duty motor. You know, later years, the Pontiac, the Trans Ams kind of went downhill in my mind. I was not a big fan of the Smokey and the Bandit years, but Pontiac had a legacy. The GTO. I mean, come on. I mean, 65, 66, 67 GTOs. If you said, Steve, I'm going to snap my fingers right now and drop you into a triple black convertible 65 GTO, I'd be like, hit me. That's a car I'd be happy to be seen driving in. So there you go. Weren't you on the Wiggles, Stephen Van Rokel? No, but I will tell you right now, the most common things I get are Heenan, the brain guy from wrestling. I hear that a lot because apparently he had some wild blonde hair. I also occasionally get Johnny Rotten. And Johnny Rotten is not looking as good these days as you'd expect for a punk star from the 70s who survived somehow. But I get Johnny Rotten quite a bit. And I will tell you, I'm not making this up, when I was a younger man and it was a little bit shorter, I'd have people saying Billy Idol. Don't get that one anymore. But if you've seen Billy Idol lately, hey, he's looking good for a guy his age. I saw footage of him at Glastonbury not too long ago, and the guy took his shirt off. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, if I looked that good at his age, I'd take my shirt off also. I'm not going to look that good at his age, though. So there you go. Bobby the Brain Heenan. Yeah, there you go. Carl Childers. And again, I don't follow big time wrestling, so I don't know anything about this. But again, I don't care. I mean, I you know, I'd rather look like somebody famous than not. So there you go. Johnny has seen better days. Amazing he's still alive. Amy Joe. Oh, absolutely. And I suspect if you go back and look at his lifestyle about 1978, 79, he was lucky to, you know, make it in the 1980s. So there you go. By the way, if you ever get a chance, you got to watch the show. I have mental blocks the worst time. But the show on the BBC with Jules Holland, and he does the thing where he brings out the different bands and they each play a couple songs. I saw Johnny Rotten, you know, on there. And I'm like, wow, he actually had a good song too. Later with Jules Holland, there you go. Just Jeff says no on the Billy Idol. Well, like I said, you got to see it with the really, really. I got to really buzz it. I got to get to stand up there. So there you go. Yeah, there you go. Somebody says I don't look like Perry Mason. Lynn H. Well, I'll take that. I don't know if I'd want to look like Perry Mason, although not a bad looking guy from back in the day. There you go. I'm trying to slow down here. Nice shirts. They finally arrived. Yeah, it's kind of funny. I've been to my mailbox before and gotten 5 shirts in one day. That's the record. But I received 2 of these one day, 2 another day, and then 1 separately. So we're rocking with the 5 shirts. What is the best looking Mustang? Somewhat happy. Since we're asking a man who is admittedly not a Ford guy when it comes to the muscle car era, I will tell you right now that there are a couple Mustang vehicles that were Shelby conversions, the Shelby Mustangs, and there's a couple years the Shelby Mustang with the convertible that's got the roll bar that's flat, and I forgot the exact year, but there's a couple of years of those that were absolutely beautiful. I know they're valuable cars. I even like the one that's got the weird triangle cutouts in the hood, but I like the Shelby Mustangs a lot. I think they're very, very nice looking cars and very, very cool. What's on your YouTube history? What do you watch the most? Downhill for Life. Believe it or not, I watch a lot of chess videos. I've mentioned this before. I play chess a little bit. I understand to play well, you got to actually study it, and I'm not going to sit down and memorize openings. But I love Agadmator. If I'm mispronouncing his name, I apologize. Agadmator. Really, really nice guy from Eastern Europe. He's got a channel, hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and he analyzes games move by move, famous games, historical games, modern games. And I watch those whenever I'm, at my desk. I'm eating lunch, for instance. I'll put up one of his games. Hello, everybody. And he's just a really, really cool guy to watch. So it's a lot of fun. Someone happy. I sent you an email, didn't hear back. I apologize if that's true, and it very well could be true, because I do try to respond to all emails. And by the way, I have to tell you that last week, right around now, was when I put up the 100,000 subscriber video. And I said I'm going to give away 100 copies of the Lemon Law Bible to a certain number of people based on how you respond and so on. And I got several hundred responses, and I had to order a collection of books. The books came in on Wednesday, and I've been sitting down, filling out envelopes, signing books, sticking them in the envelopes, sealing the envelopes up and stacking them. And I will finish that project in about an hour and a half and take them all to post office tomorrow. So if anybody out there thinks you might have been in the first 100, you might be getting a book, then it'll be going out tomorrow. And I apologize, but you'll get it. But as for emails, I try to respond to emails that ask direct questions. So you say, Steve, I've got a question. What about this? I try to respond to it. I do get a lot of people simply saying, hey, Steve, here's a story. Here's a story. And I don't respond to those unless it calls for a response, or if I'm so blown away, I'm like, thank you very much. And then I do try to do a call out to anybody who sends me a story and say, by the way, Jerry sent me this, or Michelle sent me this. I'll mention them. I try to do that also. But unfortunately, my email has gotten completely out of control and out of hand. And for me to stay on top of my emails is getting to the point where I'm almost, I may have to hire somebody to do my social media for me, which is something I never thought I'd ever say out loud before. So there you go. Bob Harvey, the mailman's going to love you. Hey, by the way, it's kind of funny. I do get my mail at a P.O. box in Atlas, Michigan. And if you want to Google it, take a look at the building. It's a very small post office. And the funny thing about it is that every time I go in there with 100 books to mail, it's a nightmare, because they got to do every single one of them individually, because they're going bulk, or they're going media mail, and it's a nightmare. And I always apologize. I'm so sorry to do this. And no, you don't understand. We like you. They go, what keeps the small rural offices in business is if they have a volume of business. So and I hope they stay in business, because the nearest big city post office to me is actually not one I want to go to very often. So I purposely got one that's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but it's a longer drive to get there, but I spend less time there when I'm just in and out, in and out, in and out. So Rational Bushcraft, did you get your silver play button yet for the 100,000 from YouTube? No, I have not. And I followed up on that, and it turns out that if you hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, you do get an actual physical button that they'll mail you, but they usually send you the invitation to apply for it a week or two after you hit the 100,000. So I have not heard yet, but I should pretty soon. Somewhat happy. I want you to sign my book collection. Well, any books you get from me, I'll sign. I sign them. Well, if you tell me not to, I won't, but no one's done that yet. I've had some people just say, hey, can you just sign this? But there you go. And Pipple number 6 asked the same question. Lynn H, why is it called the Lemon Law? Good question. I actually have done a video where I mentioned this before, but if you look it up in the Oxford English Dictionary, which I would do, except I don't know which one has the L's in it, and that would take way too much work. If you look up the usage of the word lemon to indicate something that is not what it appears to be in a bad way, it dates back, they believe, to an American usage in a sports setting where a sports writer referred to a guy who got traded between baseball teams, and the guy was supposed to be good, and he turned out to be a lemon. And they think that's the first appearance in print of it. And so it simply came to be something like, if you look at a lemon, it's a bright fruit, right? Take a bite out of it to see what happens. And so it looks all bright and happy, but it might leave a sour taste in your mouth. So that's where the saying came from. And it's been known as that pretty much everywhere. By the way, in the state of Michigan, the lemon law is not actually known as the lemon law. It's actually called like the New Motor Vehicle Warranty and Repair Act or something. But it's a stupid, long, meaningless name. And you know how governments can often do that, where they take a statute and use a bunch of goofy words to create an acronym. You'd think they could come up with a 5-name title for it that'd be LEMON, but no. So in Michigan, our legislators aren't as hardworking as the bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., apparently. So there you go. Johnny Nimble says, earlier you mentioned lots more contact from Canada. It's because of the weather. We just hole up and watch YouTube until spring comes 9 months later. There you go. Zagrasek says, is the book in audio format because I'm legally blind? The only book I have that's in audio format is American Murder Houses. And that is available as an audio book. And it's kind of funny because the book came out, was selling very, very well. And then my publisher called me and said, Steve, we've got somebody's inquired about turning this book into an audio book. And I'm like, oh, cool. I don't even know what does that mean? I mean, I know what it means, but from my viewpoint. And they said, oh, well, if you give us permission to do it, we're going to have a professional voice actor read the book, and then they're going to take those audio files and put them onto CDs or DVDs or discs, and then people can buy the discs, so they can download the audio, and it's going to be this guy reading your book. And I'm like, okay, cool, because I don't listen to audiobooks. So I said, sure, that sounds cool. So they did it, and I got 20 copies of it for free because I'm the author. So the first thing I did is I said, oh, it's my book on audio. I'm going to listen to it. Pop it in the CD player, hit play, and this guy with a voice like God comes on and goes, I can't do it, but I'll try. American Murder Houses by Steve Leto. The whole book is done in this guy, and the guy's a professional actor. He's been on Broadway, Like, it sounds better read by him. I felt bad. I can't read my own book that good. So there you go. Omani, hi from Finland. Hello. Thank you for checking in. As you know, I'm a big fan of Finland, as I have ancestors that, trace back to Finland. And I've never been there. So I feel bad. I should go. I need to go. So one of these days I will. So let's see here. Someone happy. I just sent you an email. I love American Murder Houses. Well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Can you imagine Thrift Store Hacker as read by Pauly Shore? Hey, buddy. I'm surprised that there's not a market for books read in comical voices like that. So Ranger Dan, professional audio reader equals robot. Yeah, actually, no. And I, it might sound robotic, but it's kind of funny because I wouldn't be surprised if they can get to that point. But they actually do hire voiceover people to read books, and I've talked to some, and I've heard interviews with some about how hard the work is, and I can imagine it would be mind numbing to sit there and read a book and do it without making any mistakes. And if you make mistakes, you got to stop and back up and clean it up and clear stuff out. And I understand that if you got good at it, you could probably make it through pages and pages without making mistakes. But then it's just such a grind, And I mean, and it's literally things like, chapter 1. And then if there's a subtitle, you read the subtitle, and then, and you start reading. So there you go. Somewhat happy. Who is a sexy voice introducing your videos? I've alluded to that. She's a voiceover artist from Canada, and it's just somebody I met through the channel, and got to talking about radio. And I said, hey, next time you're in the studio, can you just cut me some intros and outros? To which extras? Sure. I can do that tomorrow. So I also did do an interview with her as a whole episode. If you go back and dig through the back catalog of videos, there you go. Steve, this show is proof that fact is stranger than fiction. It is, because if you write fiction that's too crazy, people won't believe it. When crazy stuff happens in real life, you're like, wow. Raphmatic says, still watching in a Pine Knob haze. There you go. I drove by Pine Knob the other day, and I'm thinking, there's Pine Knob. Oh, I mean, DTE, Energy Music Theater. You can rename it. You can't make me use the title, okay? Have you been to Glen Arbor? Is that up in the south of Traverse City area? If so, yeah, I've been there many times. That area. I don't know about Glen Arbor specifically, but I've got a brother who lives near Interlaken, and so I spent a lot of time up there. In fact, today I registered for the Bayshore Half Marathon Memorial Day weekend, which ends in downtown Traverse City, starts out on the Old Mission Peninsula and runs into town. So I'll be spending that Sunday, I think, or Saturday, I forgot which, running 13 miles. There you go. Hope I can do it. Sharon Marlowe, bye all, be good, be safe, and stay honest. Why? I was kidding. Thanks for checking in. Glad you could make it. Do I have a Christmas tree? Are thou ready? Something I don't? Not yet. I might. We'll see. I do have a string of lights, the icicle lights. I put those around my front window. So the question is that enough for the holidays? I don't know. Steve, how was your day today? Our series. Well, the day's only half over. I had 2 videos go up this morning, and now I'm doing this. My day's doing pretty good. This afternoon, like I said, I'm going to sit down and sign and package up another 50 or 60 Lemon Law Bibles. So, got that going for me. So, Jay Pohl, hey, Steve, what is a paralegal and how is the pay? A paralegal is a person who assists an attorney doing work, and think of it as almost like a clerk. Some people call them law clerks, but law clerks often work for judges. Paralegals often work for attorneys. But a paralegal often has some training in the law, but not a legal law school type training. And so what they're qualified usually to do is to draft pleadings, do some research, review documents, especially in particular fields. So like I had a paralegal working for me for a while. She actually went to a community college, got an associate's degree, but in her classes, she learned like all about complaints and answers and discovery and so on. And so when she was working for me, I could give her a file and say, here's the file, review it, and outline the following things for me so I can determine if there's a case there. And then I'd review it very quickly, and she could streamline a lot of that for me. And then later on, I could give her a file and say, here, draft the complaint. She'd draft a lawsuit for me, and then I'd review the complaint. And if we got it right, then I would sign it and file it. But they can't go into court and represent you, but they can assist an attorney in a lot of things. The pay can be good depending where you're working. But I've also known paralegals who said, screw this, and went to law school and became attorneys. So there you go. Sonny Ray, what's the shirt about? Yeah, it's a joke from an earlier episode, but South Dakota's got a anti-drug program whose slogan is meth. We're on it. And I thought that was funny to ask viewers to send in shirts. And so I've got 5 of them right now. So there you go. Jupe Turwin says, Steve, it is bloody 20 EST day is about over. It might be where you are, but I got I got 2 o'clock, and I always think of noon as the halfway mark. So there you go. Ranger Dan, remember Radio Reader with Dick Estelle from Michigan State University, heard on NPR, great book reader. Yeah, there was a time when you could listen to the radio and they'd read books to you. And that's often a program they've had. I do know that there are also programs out there that will do that for the blind. Some libraries, if a book's not available as an audio book, they will record it and make it available that way. So that's another service. JOS, how do we know if we are one of the first 100 emails for one of your Lemon Law Bibles? You'll find out in about a week if you get a book from me. I'm actually going to send out a few over 100, probably about 110 maybe. But yeah, I got about 200 requests, and I did shut the thing off. So if it said send your thing in now, and that was still up, there's a good chance you're okay, but we'll see. Chevy Mustang, I'm not a lawyer. I just play one on TV or on YouTube, There you go. WRBH, Reading Radio, Zagrasect. There you go. Christopher Ritchie asks, does a process server know anything about the cases when he is serving the papers? Probably not. I've used process servers before, and I simply say, here, go serve this person. More often than not, I would simply tell them what kind of person they're looking for, just to let them know. And so once in a while, you may want to give them a heads up so they don't get beaten up or something. But I mentioned in Crazy Town Volume 1, Episode 1, that the guy who served the papers on me, I looked at him and said, hey, wait, this lawsuit's dated 2018. And here we are being served in September 2019. What's the deal? Or August, or whatever it was. And he goes, oh, that's not right. But he was just responding, generally speaking, but he's not qualified to make that ruling. A judge would make that ruling. Stephen Van Rokel, what do you want for Christmas? It's always an interesting question. I'm one of these people, I've been told I'm hard to shop for, because quite often if I want something, I simply buy it. But I guess the trick is to figure out what is out there that I'd like to have that I just don't know about yet. So that's a possibility. Why is the video laggy if you're on direct internet, and so am I? Unfortunately, the video might be laggy because I'm using a laptop, because I'm in my studio where I shoot these videos, and this is being Wi-Fi'd onto the internet. I suspect it's the Wi-Fi problem, and I apologize. That is my fault. So there you go. Adam Gallagher says, I have on occasion informed the process server on the nature of the case and the defendant's persona if it is particularly difficult. Yeah, that's what I'm getting at, is that if I'm worried, like if I had a case, I've told you the story before. I had a case where this guy beat up my client. Okay. So we're going to sue the guy for assault and battery and a bunch of other stuff. And I tell the process server, just a heads up, this guy beat up my client. You might want to, be careful. I mean, that it seems like something they'd want to know, so that's always a good thing to do. Let's see here. Kiki, Steve, you should have a listing of your public speaking dates. I will occasionally mention where I'm speaking or when. I've only spoken once recently. I spoke to a group of guys, the old Ford Car Club, about Preston Tucker about a month ago. But I did mention that on Facebook. So if you're ever curious, by the way, I've mentioned before, friend me on Facebook, Steve Leto, Lehtgo. You'll find me. I accept all friend requests on Facebook, except for the ones from the porn bots. Okay. I've got too many porn bots on there. Nothing good can come from friending a Russian porn bot. So, and I always post there when I'm speaking. More often than not, I'm speaking in the Michigan area. So if you're not in the Michigan area, that won't help you much. But if you are in Michigan and want to see me speak, the best thing to do is to follow me on Facebook. Mark T. Ewing says, Steve, where did you get the reference to donkey gymnastics? I will admit I made that up simply because I was trying to think of something that made no visual sense but would cause your brain to go, huh? Because you can find anything you want on the internet. It's like Alice's Restaurant. Anything you want can be found on the internet, especially Google or YouTube. You want to find cats drinking out of faucets. If you want to find dogs walking on their front legs, it doesn't matter. You name it. And so for whatever reason, I think the word donkey in and of itself is funny. And so I thought to myself, what would a donkey be doing that would be the craziest, goofiest thing that you'd find on YouTube? Donkey gymnastics. Now, it turns out that if you do Google that phrase, you will actually find a video somebody shot of donkeys rolling on their backs, and somebody actually labeled it donkey gymnastics. That's not what I was picturing, but something. My crazy mind, you might not want to know what I was picturing, but donkey gymnastics was just something I just made up. So there you go. None of your business. If it weren't for porn bots, I'd have no friends. Hey, we've all been there. Brian Dean, what is the most insane argument you've heard in court? I did a video on this, and I'm trying to remember what it was called, but I actually saw an attorney in court arguing that the underlying facts of the case were this husband and wife were driving, and as they went to get on the freeway, a drunk driver going the wrong direction up an entrance ramp slammed into them at like 100 miles an hour. There's no question that the drunk driver is at fault there, not just 100%, but 100%, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, in every time zone, every state. It doesn't matter. You cannot possibly think of a reason why that person's not at fault. And this attorney had filed a suit against the estate of the two people killed by his client, the drunk driver. And the estate had filed a motion to get the case thrown out of court. And I got to hear the arguments. I was in court. I remember the judge, I remember everything about it. And I was in court that day, and the estate was going, you have to throw his case out. There's no way on earth that my clients could owe that guy money. The guy who killed them owe them money. And the judge unfortunately said, the state of the law in Michigan, he goes, I don't think that the guy's going to win, but I've got to let it go to a jury. And at that moment in time, he ruled and said he's going to let it go to a jury, and a jury's probably going to laugh at it, throw it out, but you never know. But the point is that hearing that, and you realize some drunk guy sobered up after he got out of jail and went and talked to an attorney. He goes, I want to sue the people I killed. And an attorney said, sure, I'll take that case. So that to me is the worst case I've seen with my own eyes. I've read of crazier cases. I've heard of crazier cases. The internet's had crazier cases. I've talked about crazier cases on my channel, but that of the one I've actually seen in court, that's the one where I wanted to get up and punch the attorney. And I wasn't involved. So there you go. Yeah, Situation Money says donkey basketball was popular in the early 1980s. I think it still is. It's a fundraiser thing where they bring in 6 or 8 donkeys, and you try to get them to go around in a court and you try to play basketball and hope that they don't have any mishaps, as we shall say, inside the building, because if that happens, all bets are off. So there you go. Yeah, somebody just asked, you're still on? Yeah, it's 2:15. I tend to go to 1:30, or excuse me, 2:30, hour and a half. So, I got time. So we'll do that. Yams or mashed potatoes and gravy, dark or white meat? Mashed potatoes and white meat. I'm boring. Had Thanksgiving dinner, but had it at a restaurant, and unfortunately, the turkey was not the best. I'm not the kind of guy who would normally go into a restaurant and go, "Do you guys have a turkey dinner?" But once a year, what can I tell you? Did you play sports in high school? Lynn H. Yes, I did. I played soccer in high school. I played soccer starting in 7th grade, junior high, played it all the way through high school, quite a bit. And I also played soccer as an adult, indoor leagues and so on. And then I also played baseball. I played Little League baseball from T-ball all the way through, 12 years old. And then I played high school baseball a little bit, but not as much. The high school baseball was not as big of a deal as soccer was. So I really enjoyed playing soccer a lot. And then after high school, a few years later, I started running on and off. And I've been running a lot lately, also mountain biking a little bit. But as far as organized team sports go, pretty much the soccer was the main deal there. So there you go. Did you partake in any hand-to-hand combat for Black Friday deals? Jacob West, maybe use some nunchucks. No, I did not. I steer clear of the malls on Black Friday and also Dark Saturday, whatever they call it, or even, heaven forbid, Thanksgiving Sunday. What I'll probably do most of my Christmas shopping is about a week or so out from Christmas. I'll make a point to swing by the mall on like a Tuesday morning or something, and the place is empty, and you can walk into stores and not have to, elbow somebody to get a better deal. There you go. J. Paul, next Thanksgiving you're invited. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Somewhat happy on YouTube. Invite to drive fun car. Offer still stands. It's a Jag. Oh, yeah. It depends on where that is. I'm always up for cool cars. If you dig through my channel, you'll find some car videos. Good friend of mine named Mark Lieberman owns a company called Nostalgic Motoring, and he buys and sells cool cars, and he's often got a couple of his own. And we've gone for a ride in an old Corvette and a nice old Ferrari and a nice big Chevelle and a whole bunch of other, a Lotus that his wife owns. And what I do is I bring my cameras with me, and I videotape walking around the car, and we go for a ride in the car. We went for a ride in this little tiny clown car that's built in Italy, Baldy Frog. And I put those videos up. And the thing is, those videos don't do quite as well as my law videos do, but I just do them because they're fun to do. So if anybody, in the area has a cool car, and I'm always up for a cool ride, so we'll see. Oh God. The NFL could use donkeys as kickers. Yeah. What's funny is how they've been using a lot of rugby players. You always hear about these college football teams that have got Australian kickers, and it's because they've brought over guys who can do rugby kicks, and especially as punters. And it's an interesting thing. I remember when it was a big deal to get soccer players to be kickers, and now it's the rugby players. There you go. Let's see here. A CUCV for your military vehicle. Is that a duck? I had my Dewsnap, my M35A2, 2.5 ton Army truck. Don't have that anymore. I've been thinking about getting another one, but they're so big, and it's to me to own a vehicle like that and not drive it often is a shame. And the funny thing is, I actually know where in southeastern Michigan there's a guy who's got a duck parked next to his garage, and he's got a thing called an alligator. And an alligator looks like one of those World War I Army tanks, where it's got the tracks that go up and around and over. But it's an amphibious vehicle from World War II. It's an extremely rare vehicle. And if you've driven by it and you're a car guy, you know what I'm talking about. There's only one that I know of in the whole area. And I've stopped and talked to the guy about it. And it's been parked there for years. But it's an amphibious landing vehicle / army tank that was designed to go island hopping in the Pacific. And it can be offloaded, way out here, and drive ashore 1.5 knots, and then get on land and then do 3 miles an hour with a bunch of guys inside of it. I don't think it had any weaponry on board, so I'm not sure I'd want to be in that thing during a wartime. But it's a pretty cool vehicle to have. So I've always liked those military vehicles. Do lawyers carry insurance like doctors have malpractice? Yeah, they have legal malpractice insurance for attorneys as well. Yeah. See here, I have a custom. You need a Cybertruck. Is it digital? Is it tactical? Oh boy. Amradco, is it just me, or do Dodge cars and trucks have more transmission problems than other makes? Well, excluding the dual clutch transmission of Ford, yes. I've had quite a few clients who've had Dodges and other Chryslers with electrical problems also. A lot of electrical problems and transmission problems. And some of those, I'm not sure which causes which. I'm not sure if the electrical problems are causing bad transmissions or if it's a coincidence. Aura says, do you have a dog? No, I do not at this moment in time. I had Milo and Wolfie. Got Milo first, about a year later, got Wolfie, overlapped about 14 years together. And then Milo passed away in 2015. Wolfie passed away in 2017. And I've not had a dog since then, but thank you. Somewhat Happy is from Wixom. I know where that is. I used to live in South Lyon, right around the corner. Gene's Garage. Steve, can I ask you a Michigan-specific law question? Yes, you can. The question is whether I'm going to spot it now or not. So we'll see. Allegan area, John Keith, west side of the Mitten. Only rain today and a thunderstorm last night. Wow. Yeah, no, we got snow this morning, but I think it came up from underneath. Like, I think it came up through Indiana and Illinois. Hey, Steve from Australia, Nigel. Hey there, how you doing? I love Australia. I'm on the radio down there also with Chris Goodsell, Road Ramblings. Gene's Garage. If you were served over the telephone without a specific judge saying that was legal to be served over the telephone, would that service be legal? I've never heard of service over the telephone. Service, to be served with something in Michigan and in most states, they've got to physically put it in your hands or in your presence and let you know about it. So if I walk up to you and you put your hands behind your back, okay, I can hold the complaint up and go, here you are, dude, you're served, and drop it at your feet, and I walk away, and you're served. In the O.J. Simpson case, there's a famous case where they're trying to serve a guy. There's a wall. They walked up to the guy's gated, he had a security gate. They buzzed him. He walked down. He goes, what do you guys want? And they go, we're here to serve you. And he goes, you can't serve me. And they go, you're being served. And they threw it over the wall. And the judge said, that's good service. He was there. He was made aware of it. If he chooses not to walk with, that's his problem. But if you cannot find somebody to serve them, you've got to go to court and get an order for alternate service. And a court will say, here's what you can do to serve them. And the court will give them a list of things to do to make sure the person gets served. And it'll often be things like mail it to them, U.S. Postal Service, mail it to them, certified return receipt requested, restricted delivery, and then go tape it to their front door. And if you do those three things, then they're served. I've never heard of a telephone service. It wouldn't even make any sense because obviously there's no way to prove it was done. If I mailed it to you with a green card, I can prove that. If I mail it to you without a green card, I can still get a receipt for the mailing. If I tape it to your front door, I can tape it to your front door and photograph it. I mean, but I've never heard of service by phone. I've never even heard of service by fax. If you think about that, back in the days with fax machines, it should have been allowed. But what if they don't have paper in their machine? So there you go. Christopher Ritchie, when you did the disc jockey job, did the station rely on ham radio for traffic and weather reports, etc.? No, actually, we got all of our traffic and weather. We got traffic from AAA. AAA had a reporter would call in once an hour to us, and we put her on the air, either live or tape her and put her on the air. And we got all of our weather from the AP Weather Service, which was built into the news stuff. Every newsroom at that time had a machine just clicking away, click, 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 and these rolls of paper would run through a continuous sheet, and you'd run in there and you'd rip off the paper. They call it rip and read, where you rip it off and run in and read without proofreading it. And about once an hour, they'd actually send over a new weather forecast. And in Michigan, it would be by zone, and you'd need to know what zone you're in. But it would say like zones 1, 3, and 5, or 2, 4, 6, or whatever. And you'd find the weather for your zone. And then depending on the format you were in, whether you'd read that verbatim or clean it up. And I was at stations before, they'd say, you have to fit the entire weather forecast in like 12 seconds. So you have to boom, 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 and get it over with. So didn't use ham radios for that. One station I was at had a police radio with a scanner, and the guy to leave the scanner on. And occasionally we'd pick up something that way, but almost never. If something actually happened, you would just call the station, go, hey guys, what happened? And you hope they'd tell the truth. So, see here. In New York, we have nail and mail. You attempt 3 times and you can tape to door and mail in plain unmarked envelope. Adam Gallagher. Yeah, and that's it. And the question, Adam, is do you have to get a court order to allow that, or can you do that automatically? Because in Michigan, what you do is go back to court and file a motion for alternate service. And it's almost always granted, but you'd have the affidavit of the process server saying, I have attempted 3 times. I was there on this date, this time, this date, this time, this time. And the judge often look at it to make sure you weren't always showing up at, like, say, noon on a weekday. Okay. And so if you showed up one morning, one afternoon, one evening, a judge would go, fine, and do that. Like you said, nail and mail it. So the one is that you attach to the front door. You actually don't nail it, you'd tape it, but I know what you're saying. And the other one is you'd mail it to them, and a judge would go, hey, at that point, if they ignore it, it's their fault. So there you go. And John Doses, Florida is the same. And that's pretty much common. The alternate service is a pretty common thing. Fred Stewart, I've seen thunder snow, 76.7, huge blizzards in northeastern Ohio. Scary as heck when you're a kid. Yeah, I've heard of that, but I've never actually seen it myself. Adam Gallagher says it is in the CPLR, civil procedure legal rules. What does CPLR stand for? I'm just guessing. As an accepted method, no leave required. Oh, cool. And that makes sense. It would seem to me that to force the motion is a waste of time. And it would make complete sense to say, something, all you got to do is certify you tried 3 times with some kind of evidence otherwise. And it makes complete sense to do that. So that's pretty cool. I like when they streamline practices like that too. So, yeah. Somebody says, Rob Bat, that's why I'm wondering if he's ever done criminal defense. I missed the first half of that, so I don't know what you're talking about. Lynn H., did you ever own a car with an 8-track player? No, I did not. I owned one car that had an AM radio only. And around that time, 8-track players came out. But most people who were into the music, even back then, recognized that 8-track players were stupid, because 8 tracks would often break songs. An 8-track player is actually just 4 channels, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. And so what happens is it would go around once, and when it got the end of this, it would just jump to the second track, the third track, the fourth track. And you actually have a slight gap when you got the end of that track. And so if it was in the middle of a song, it'd be a gap and the next. And so it was just a bad experience. And almost like if you had an LP with a song that began on one side and ended on the other side, you wouldn't do that, And I understand there's some long songs in 45s they did that, but it's another story. And so I think many people recognized at the time that 8-track tapes were not going to be around for very long. And so it's kind of weird. Rita Hanla Matla. Hey, Steve, have you ever seen the Northern Lights? And of course, Rita is from Finland, or at least that's a Finnish name. I hope you are. Yes, I have. The Upper Peninsula of Michigan, Northern Lights happen quite a bit. Copper Harbor, been up there a few times, and they're an amazing thing to see. A lot of times in the Upper Peninsula, you can see them, but especially if you are in Copper Harbor on the right night, looking out across Lake Superior, you're so far at the edge of civilization. The Northern Lights on the horizon over the lake is an astounding thing to see. If you haven't seen them, hope you do someday, because it's a very, very cool experience. Is there a time limit to sue someone in small claims court in Michigan? Bruce Napier. Bruce, you have to understand the small claims court is like district court in that all the same laws apply. The only difference is the procedure within the courtroom itself, so that if there's a statute of limitations on the law, it's going to be the same whether it's district court, small claims court, or circuit court, or any of those courts. So with any cause of action you have, regardless, never wait. Talk to an attorney, find out if it's something you need to pursue or not, because some statutes are relatively short, might be a year or 2, or like contracts might be up to 6. But anything beyond 6 is going to be a real long shot. So you're going to want to be careful about how long you wait before you pursue something like that. Chad Gearlick, I was thinking that 8 tracks are going to make a big comeback. If so, you can go to the local Goodwill store and find baskets full of them, where they're literally like a nickel a piece, and they only have value as an antique. So there you go. Navarine, I miss living in Michigan. Yeah. I love Michigan. I know people who say, Steve, the weather's bad, the roads are bad, taxes are high, the politicians are a little out there. But you know something? I'm not here for any of those things. This is I love the terrain, I love the place, and I love the people here. Notwithstanding the politicians. So there you go. Thank you, Steve. I so appreciate you answering that question about alternate service. Hey, thanks, Jeans. I apologize. I know that once in a while a question will come through here, and it's just the timing, and I might not catch it the first time it passes through. I do what I can. So there you go. So the home on Bay. Thank you, Steve. Love your show. Try being a landlord in Washington State. Squatters and deadbeats have more rights to real property than the lawful owner. Yeah, no, you want something? And I'll end on this little rant, but I'm going to tell you right now. I've had friends who suggest, and they say, Steve, instead of investing your money like in stocks or whatever, buy a piece of real estate and become a landlord. Go sit in a court and watch a bunch of landlord tenant hearings for an afternoon, and then tell yourself, go buy real estate and become a landlord. It's not fun for anybody. And so I know the idea that if you have a piece of real estate and you rent it and you're making these, or even you don't have to hire attorneys, you got to chase them to court, suddenly you see your profit margins evaporating as you waste money on other stuff. So I don't want to deal with it. Not going to become a landlord anytime soon, especially not in Washington or California or New York or Michigan. But guys, it's an hour and a half and I'm starting to get dizzy. What happens is I talk so much my lungs don't get the air, and it causes short circuits up here. So I appreciate the fact you guys hung out with me. We did not break 600, but we got close. But I appreciate all of you coming here. Thanks. We'll do it again next week. Same time, same place. As always, until then, bye-bye.